Get up, and we have enormous breaking news this morning. We're not going to deal with a trivia question or anything like that. We have incredibly important news, and I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but one of the greatest figures in the history of American sports, one of the greatest players, and one of the most important people in the history of basketball in this or any country has died. Jerry West has died at the age of 86. That was announced by the Los Angeles Clippers that he's been working for today. West, where do you begin to describe a person's career? It has been argued, and I would argue it loudly, that there aren't a handful of people who had more significant careers in basketball than Jerry West did. First, as a player, one of the greatest collegiate players ever, an Olympian, one of the greatest NBA players ever. Of course, he is the logo, the silhouette that you see every single time you see the NBA logo. That is a silhouette of Jerry West. He was one of the great players of all time, scoring points in enormous numbers at a time where there were no three-point shots in basketball, leading the Lakers to 9 NBA Finals in his 13 seasons, winning just once. But interestingly, to this day, still the only person ever to be named the MVP of a Finals that his team lost. He finished his playing career as one of the greatest players ever. He was on the 50 greatest players list, and that certainly isn't even beginning to do him justice. He's in the handful of greatest players that ever touched a basketball in their lives. He then went on to a brief but successful career in coaching, and then an enormous career as an executive, particularly running the Los Angeles Lakers. His acquisitions included James Worthy, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, hiring Phil Jackson as their coach. I don't think it's overstating it to say basketball as we know it today has been shaped by Jerry West about as much as it has been by any other person that ever lived, and that is with the exclusion of no one. I'm doing this off the top of my head here, and there's so many numbers and all that sort of thing that we can bring to you. Let's come out here to the group, and again, we are just getting this news now. So there is so much to be said about this. Windy, I will start with you as one who has loved the game all of your life. I'm trying to come up with ways to capture for a younger audience that may not be fully aware the impact that Jerry West had on basketball.
Just an absolute giant, an absolute giant. His impact on the game over the years is maybe as great as anyone's ever has, because you look at this guy who in the 60s was a star, in the 70s was a star, in the 80s and 90s was an executive star. I mean, not only did he stage some of the greatest battles of the NBA Finals history, Celtics, Lakers, he built the Lakers. He was the guy that brought Shaquille O'Neal to Los Angeles. He was the guy that talked the Warriors into not trading Klay Thompson. He threatened to resign his advisor role if they were going to trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. He was a big piece of building the Warriors dynasty. Even recently with the Clippers, he was a very valued member of the Clippers front office. I mean, this is a guy who was as relevant in the 2020s as he was in the 1960s. He's a legend in West Virginia, one of the greatest sons in the history of the state, one of the greatest contributors to the history of the Lakers franchise. I mean, honestly, if you just listed his accomplishments, it would take hours. And not only that, in the times that I talked to him over the years, Greeny, one of the things about him is how he reacted to loss. He suffered some of the worst and most difficult losses of anybody in history. Emblematic was that winning the MVP in a series that he lost. And him talking about loss and how it drove him and how it affected him was some of the most invigorating and educational conversations I've ever had. This is a man whose career was littered with wins and rings, who was driven very much by defeat. And just an absolutely fascinating giant of a man. And the NBA is a place it is today because of Jerry West. That's not a passing comment. He's a foundational core of the league for 60-plus years.
Yeah, it's really well said. Tonight, I'm sure they will do an outstanding job of honoring him before and during Game 3 of the NBA Finals, and much, much more. Hembo just handed me a packet here of information on Jerry West. I could spend the next 3 hours of your life reading you the list of accomplishments that this man had, first as a player and then again briefly as a coach and then as an executive, literally the architect of some of the most famous and greatest teams that you have ever seen. I'll get quick comments here from basketball. Well, let me first show you. These are just a few of them that we have selected. Three-time All-American at West Virginia, won the gold medal in the 1960 Olympics, played 14 seasons, all with the Lakers, was an all-star, every one of them. He, in fact, was first-team All-NBA 10 times. The record is 12 for LeBron. He was two-time NBA Executive of the Year. He is one of only 5 players to look at his number. He averaged 25 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists. This at a time where there was no three-point shooting. He was a magnificent outside shooter at a time when that was not nearly as valuable as it is today. Quick comments, if I could, hear from people for whom basketball has been such a big part of your life.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Basketball has completely shaped my life. And of course, we extend our thoughts and condolences to all those that knew Jerry West, his friends, his family. But for the game that we know and love today and the game that I grew up watching, I extend nothing but gratitude to Jerry West. I mean, there are players that play the game and then they step away from it. And there are players that play the game and that love the game and dedicate their life to it. And that is exactly what Jerry West did. And this great game that we have today and we love so much, we talk about it every single day, it's due to him. So nothing but gratitude for everything that he did to give us what we have today.
Yeah, I think for me, I just think about the first time I looked up who the logo was and realized it was Jerry West, his history, what he's done for the game, the impact. As a 90s baby and a kid who loves the game, and as a young man now, you appreciate greatness in what he's done. And he's a founding father to this game. And once again, our prayers and deepest condolences go out to his family and everyone that knew him. Obviously, I played against those Warriors teams that had Clay, and they would have been a different team if they would have traded him for Kevin Love, who's also a friend of mine. But I think the biggest thing is his impact on the game has lasted for so long. I'm a 90s baby, and I know exactly what he's done to this game.
As well you should. I'm out of time here. Obviously, they'll pick up this conversation and continue with it throughout the day on First Take, which is coming up next, and throughout the day here on ESPN. If you are a young person, look up what this man meant to the world of basketball today, and you might be surprised by what you find. Jerry West has died at 86. We will be right back.
More. Now, it's I'm a little hesitant because you heard Malika and Tim, they were talking about getting that injection and how he wasn't feeling very great. So I will say I put an asterisk by it, but I do think Dallas is going to get the absolute best from Luka and Kyrie, similar to the way they did in that Minnesota series.
All right, and then on the other side, Jason Tatum has not had a big offensive game in this series yet. His number is 25.5. Tonight, what do you think?
I gave one Duke guy more. I'm going to give another Duke guy more because in Game 3 against the Pacers in that series, Jason Tatum led the team in scoring. We haven't seen him score in this series. He's been facilitating. He's been kicking the ball out. Especially if Kristaps Porzingis is limited, I think Jason Tatum gets into his scoring bag while still finding his teammates.
All right, so those are our predictions. And by the way, if you agree, ESPN Bet has boosted that for us. That's exactly right. Drea says more on all three. If you believe over on Luka, over on Tatum, over on Kyrie, we have a special boost right now, plus 525. It's the Get Up special on ESPN Bet. Meanwhile, as we speak about Jason Tatum, Joe Mazzulla was asked about his superstar's performance in the finals so far, and his response was fascinating. Listen.
Do you think that we are watching the best version of Jason Tatum in these finals?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I think because of the type of player that he is, it's always going to look different because of his versatility. And you live in America or Brazil?
I live in Brazil.
Well, that's probably why you asked that question, and none of the American ones did, because they look at the lens differently of basketball. And so in America, nothing's ever good enough, and it's always about what can you do for me right now. And it's not always the case in those situations. So yes, I think we are, and I think he's only going to get better. And he makes greatness look easy.